Hey everyone. A while back I did a commission for Jye Dye, the artist who did my outro music, and the song that he made me is more metal. But he usually does like lo-fi chill beats, and he's really good at it. You guys should give him a listen. His Spotify is linked on screen right now and will also be linked in the description below. As for the commission, I think I did well for my skill level at the time, but I've improved since then, and I thought it would be fun to redraw it and see the difference. And just right off the bat, looking at it, I can see that the proportions are off. One arm is completely massive, and for some reason his bicep is in front of his chest on that back arm. So we're going to go through and remake it and see if we can do him a bit more justice on our second try. So the first thing I'm going to do is adjust the pose a little with him holding the Pokeball instead of tossing it because it just didn't come across well in the original. And then I'm going to have him hold up the offhand kind of raised into like a fist pump and kind of give him more of a victorious air. It's really easy to point out errors in hindsight, but one problem I think I had in the past was that I never flipped my canvas. So any problems with the proportions were harder for me to spot, and I wouldn't end up catching them until I'd already done so much work that it wasn't worth changing anymore. If you haven't heard what I'm talking about, here's an example. If the face you're drawing is tilting slightly towards the left, your brain might get used to the way it looks and not pick up on it, but as soon as you flip the canvas, the parts that are skewed are now going opposite to the direction that your brain is used to, and they stand out. If you're doing digital art and you've never tried flipping the canvas while drawing, I would definitely recommend you try it out. It's one of those tricks that feels obvious once you hear about it, but if you're like me, you spend multiple years not even considering it, and then you kick yourself afterwards. I like to do it multiple times throughout the sketch step itself, just so I don't get too far ahead before I notice a mistake, but I don't tend to do it at all during the final line work or color steps. One thing I really love about digital art is the way you can cut out and shift minor details instead of needing to redraw a bunch of details anytime you make a mistake. And it's obviously not going to work every time. There's going to be times when you just have to redraw something, but it's always nice to be able to just take a small detail that's only slightly out of line and just shift it over. Like with drawing Jye's face here, once I get the general details out, I can go through and cut out and move around the shapes that I've already drawn and make sure that they're all in the right place. So in the original commission, Jye asked that I put Haunter, the Pokemon, over his shoulder. So I'm going to add him in now, but I'm going to shift his pose slightly from the original, and I decided I'm going to have him mimicking Jye's hand position. I didn't realize it while drawing it, but it actually looks like Haunter's a stand from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Totally not an intended reference, but I'll take it. And now I've dropped down the opacity on my sketch layer, and I'm going through and starting in my line work. And since the original commission was done, his facial hair and hairstyle have changed, so I'm going to go ahead and update both of those to be more current. I've also decided to do a full-on smile for this drawing instead of the blank expression that I had him with in the original one. It wasn't a conscious thing, but back then I never used to draw facial expressions on anyone. And I still tend towards angrier faces, but I like to have a little bit more diversity in my facial expressions now. So, Jye was one of the first people to reach out for a commission back when I started on TikTok a few years ago. And since then, I've done a handful of other designs for him. And I don't really do commissions as much anymore. I've been focusing more on my illustration work and making videos. But I think it's cool that we still keep in touch. And honestly, it's people like him that reached out to me and encouraged me with my art that kept me going. Just people genuinely showing an interest in my art was enough to keep me motivated to continue putting in the practice to improve. And now it's really cool going back through my old art and seeing how my style and techniques have changed since then. And you can even see it just in the comparison between the old version and new version of this drawing here. I think in the future I might do more of these. It's always fun to go back and redraw old artwork to get a good metric of how much you've improved. If that's something you guys would be interested in, go ahead and drop a comment below and let me know. But now I'm finishing up my line work, and then after that I'm going to go through and clean up some of my details. So I'll darken his eyebrows, add in some shading, a little bit of detail on the back of the glove, and then I noticed that the Pokeball was actually too high, so I'm going to drop that down further into his hand. And then I'll add in some facial hair and go in and stencil in his tattoos, which I couldn't actually find a good reference for, so if you're watching this, Jye, I'm sorry that they're a little inaccurate. And with that done, I'm going to go into the color step, and here I am just blocking in the skin shade, which isn't quite the right color, but I'll go in later and adjust that. And then now I'm moving on to the eyes and teeth, and then after that I'll color in his shirt and his gloves. And for the gloves, I'm just using the same color scheme as the Pokeball. And after I finish coloring the gloves and the Pokeball, I move on to Haunter. And while blocking the colors for Haunter, I realized that he didn't quite look right. So I went back through and redid his line work and added some details to his face. This is one of those situations where a shortcut isn't going to help and I just have to redraw details by hand. But I'm glad I decided to change it because I think he looks much better after the edit. And while shortcuts are nice, sometimes it's important to just put in the extra work to get the drawing just right. And then once I finish with Haunter's extra details, I'm going to go in and do my initial skin tone shading. And I'll do more in-depth shading later, but for now I'm just blocking in the darkest areas. And I'm really just doing this to solidify the direction of the shading. And that's definitely one thing that the original version of this drawing suffered from, was inconsistent shading. And then after that, I'm going to go into the tattoos. I initially drew the tattoos in black, but I'm going to erase them out and redraw them in a low opacity green. Honestly, I still need practice in the tattoo department, but I'm getting there. For this drawing, I'm going to focus less on getting the exact details of the tattoo right, and more on just getting the general shape and color to get the point across. But I think using that dark black is one of the main problems with the way I used to draw tattoos. And now that we're done with the tattoos, I'm going to move into the shading and highlights. The old drawing is all hard shading, done in the more cel-shaded anime style. For this version, I'm going with more of a blend of hard shading and airbrushed. These days I don't really have one set style that I use for shading. I just kind of play it by ear from drawing to drawing, and decide as I go which style is best for each drawing. But I really like the way the shading on Haunter looks here. He looks cool with just the line work, but the shading has really given his face that extra oomph. And I'm using a higher saturation on the shadows to really emphasize that purple color. And now I'm going in and adding his highlights. After this, I'm going to move into the background. For the original, I had the background being a city street filled with neon signs. For the redesign, I'm going to focus less on a literal background and just have some colored smoke and a nimbus glow around the two of them to just focus it on the figures themselves. And then I'm going to throw in some highlights on the figures, and after that I wanted something in that blank space on the left. So I decided to put Jye's name in there, running from top to bottom, and then I'm going to have a blue light intersect it, and I'm going to throw on some edge lighting on the two figures to kind of round out the color palette. And there we go. I think this turned out quite nicely. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, I'd appreciate it if you left a like and hit that subscribe button if you'd like to see more videos like this in the future. Feel free to leave a comment below if you have a suggestion for a future video or even just to say hello. That's all for now. Have a good one.
Jesus wept.